he is probably like Trump is signing the bill at I think afternoon. White House is gonna sign the crypto bills, and it's gonna be the next big thing.
Have created, I think, a really unique company with Bitcoin because they started by creating a Bitcoin treasury company that has now over 600,000 Bitcoin. I think that they're correct when they say this is, you know,
So yeah, it's gonna be like the next Michael Saylor. Tom Lee might be the next Ethereum treasury Michael Saylor, and Ethereum will pump to, this and this amount, so $10,000. But then you're gonna see basically the next XRP Michael Saylor. So no worries at all. We already have a Michael Saylor for Bitcoin, and we have one for Ethereum now because Ethereum is going up. But who's gonna take the throne for XRP?
Bitcoin on beta, and that's why it's more attractive than a Bitcoin ETF. If Bitcoin is at 100,000 and let's say Bitcoin doubles, MicroStrategy should actually rise more than that. And one of the questions people ask is, well, why should MicroStrategy trade at a premium to Bitcoin? And the reason I believe it does is that they own so much Bitcoin, it has a sovereign put. 600,000 Bitcoin is so much that
they literally bought all of the supply with Bitcoin. So XRP supply is also getting bought up by these whales. So all you need is one big whale, like one large whale that is gonna buy 100, 200 million of XRP, which some already did, to really make it big.
if the US government wants to get to 1 million Bitcoin, they can either buy 1 million Bitcoin in the open market, and I think if sellers knew that, they wouldn't sell and Bitcoin's price would rise parabolically. This is intersecting with crypto.
So yeah, XRP has actually been growing very well, but the thing is, we still need big investors in XRP. Right now, it's a lot of retail and a lot of small institutions and medium-sized institutions. But if we can get someone like Michael Saylor, so not exactly Michael Saylor because he's already focusing on Bitcoin, getting big on XRP, I think this would possibly boost XRP to $7 to $8, which would be absolutely unbelievable. And Tom Lee is actually sure this will happen at some point.
It's the architecture that future banks want to have. When the Goldman and JP Morgans create stable coins, they also want that layer one blockchain to be secure. If someone buys Ethereum, they're only getting 1 unit of Ethereum. And if they buy an Ethereum ETF, they're only getting 1 unit of Ethereum. But an Ethereum treasury company has the ability to grow your holdings of Ethereum per share because one, they can take advantage of capital markets by issuing, entities or assets at a premium and acquiring more Ethereum. They earn Ethereum through staking, etc. And then there's ability to acquire Ethereum sort of strategically by looking at other assets. So I think that there is at a much lower cost because an individual would be borrowing money at a higher cost, but because Ethereum is volatile, an Ethereum treasury company can issue instruments that lower the cost of money. And in fact, like MicroStrategy, for instance, essentially borrows money at zero because of the volatility of Bitcoin. And it turns out Ethereum has twice the volatility of Bitcoin. There's a couple.
So that's the good thing. Like if we get an XRP treasury, you're gonna be making more money, or these companies that put 20 million in, we're already gonna be having an Ethereum treasury. It's gonna be making more money just because of the profits off you can make off that investment.
A couple of things I'll share. Mark Newton, who's the head of technical strategy at Fundstrat, has some views on Bitcoin and Ethereum. In the near term, he thinks both have 20% upside from here. So that would be putting Ethereum closer to 3,300. And he thinks something around 4,500 or 5,000 in the next few months is achievable. That's a pretty big move for Ethereum.
We saw that. Yeah, that's a pretty big move, but we already saw with XRP, hitting those numbers. So I definitely think it's also possible for Ethereum. Like if Ethereum goes up, so does XRP.
Ethereum. But I think a perspective someone can have is that realize that Circle trades at around 100 times EBITDA, which I think it's fair because it's scarce and it is one of the best IPOs really in several years. But if you applied that metric to the layer one Ethereum, it would imply a value north of per ETH token of over 10,000. So I think it shows you that if the stablecoin is being valued in the market at 100 times, that the underlying layer one, which is really what's securing those transactions, probably is undervalued. I think that's why Wall Street.
That's why they bought all of the XRP supply, is because they literally thought it was undervalued. It's simple as that. They was undervalued. Also, the Ripple stablecoin came in, and that actually, pumped their hopes up even more.
Banks, as they're converging onto crypto, they're going to end up staking Ethereum itself. JP Morgan's stablecoin is going to be operating off an Ethereum ultimately as the layer one. Ethereum is, I think, the preferred blockchain because it has the largest network value of those that you mentioned. And I think also it is the most, I think, compliant in terms of US laws. That's going to be important, but
so Tom Lee is exactly right why XRP, will explode. He said it's US compliant. And that is what I've been saying a long time in my videos, is that XRP has been working with the US for 10 years. So if you're US compliant right now, you're in a very fortunate position as a cryptocurrency. Because if you're not US compliant, look at what happened to Monero. Look at what happened at mixers, like crypto mixers. They are completely gone and banned off-site. It's kind of like using deep web. It's not happening. They won't allow it.
One thing that people need to keep in the back of their minds is the reason someone's going to end up using Ethereum is that you need to make sure that layer one is secure, right? If someone has 100 billion of circulating supply of a stable coin and the layer one isn't compliant and it isn't secure, then it really undermines the security of that stable coin itself. There is going to be day-to-day volatility, so it's really difficult for someone to necessarily take a lot of conclusions from one day to the next. But keep in mind, when MicroStrategy began its Bitcoin strategy, Bitcoin was around 16,000. And now MicroStrategy has had a 25 times total return. Part of it is because of the rise in Bitcoin, and part of it.
Yeah, so even like when I checked the prices of XRP at 1 cent, there was still very small, institutional investors. But now we're finally seeing some coming in, and that's why I still think XRP's potential is high, because they still don't have the big money coming in. Yes, they are at $3, $4, but we're still waiting for institutions. We're still waiting for all these big crypto adoptions, and that's what really makes XRP, explode.
Of course, is their ability to be a treasury company.
The ongoing adoption of Bitcoin by governments, institutions, and media signifies a broader recognition of its value. However, Lee asserts this journey is just the beginning, comparing the initial years to the current widespread interest and investment, with a giant spotlight on Bitcoin ETFs. Lee highlights this big.
So yeah, XRP ETF could literally save it to $5, $6, $7. The XRP treasuries, even bigger. And he said, very important thing he said is the adoption. The adoption is going to be huge. Right now, the governments have been waiting for a long time to see crypto basically explode. And without adoption, you can't get very far. Without government, you can't get very far nowadays. And that is exactly what XRP and Ethereum want to resolve.
Stable coins, that's 30% of Ethereum's network usage today. When you see like the JP Morgan stablecoin, it's being built on Ethereum.
Right.
Robinhood is building their tokenizing business on Ethereum. So as what they call a layer one, Ethereum is like the preferred choice for Wall Street. It already is more than 60% of all the tokenized real world assets, and I think that share is growing. If stablecoins grow to over 2 trillion, as Treasury Secretary Bessent predicts, that's an exponential usage of Ethereum and the Ethereum token. So It's really positive for Ethereum. And incidentally, the Circle trades at around 100 times.
Tom Lee challenges the conventional economic metrics, asserting that these metrics are often manipulated to paint a specific narrative, like labor statistics and inflation figures.
The issue is people trust Ethereum more nowadays and XRP than they trust stock